I'm Rieny Cualoping, and this is the ENERI Access Series Asian Pacific American Heritage Month 2021 edition. And we are so lucky to have with us today Tatsu Aoki, who is one of the most prolific, talented major notes around. Major note as opposed to a minor note.
Tatsu Aoki is an award-winning, multi-talented musician, composer, filmmaker, educator, director, and producer.
Thank you for having me. That was a too much introduction for what I do, but thank you very much for inviting me to talk about some of the things.
We go back a long way, Tatsu, right? Over 20 years. Over 20 years.
Right before we inaugurated the Asian American Jazz Festival, that would be like 1996, 1995, 1996.
Can you talk a little bit about the Toyo Akimoto project, which ENERI was very lucky to work on?
I grew up in this Tokyo geisha house, and as far as I can remember, I was hearing the shamisen, taiko, and dance and all that stuff. I grew up with this traditional music, and it was particular style of the music was owned by my family, Toyoaki. And my mother, who's in Tokyo, still dancing today, she's the last survivor. She's 84 now, right? And
I didn't know she's still dancing today. Did I hear
Yeah,
it?
she's dancing today, yes.
Wow.
She's still dancing today. And she plays a little bit of a shamisen still. So, I have this family legacy. Now, my children also here in Chicago, they perform with me. So that part of the family lineage is still alive, even though I moved to Chicago. So Toyoaki is one of the shamisen music that I teach in Chicago. I have about 8 students learning that particular style of the Tokyo geisha music. I think what you helped us is that back in the days, we produced an album called Toyo Akimoto. We're doing very, very good, consistent production on Asian Improv Records.
Asian Improv Records number 111, Jeff Chan, released in April 2021, and upcoming as number 112 will be one featuring Francis Wong.
Yeah, I also recently have been working with another record company that's releasing my work. They just released the Best of the Mayumi project.
I got one.
Yes, you have one. And that's the multiple release with the LPs. So you can buy them in LP or CD. And this is the new thing in the music world is that we're going back. You can see in back of me, I have a stack of LP piling up in there. So we're going back to vinyl in some of the parts of the music industry. So we did Mayumi project in LP. So come September, I have a new album with this record label called FPE Record. And they are releasing my new album.
This is Best of Mayumi project in CD.
This is a vinyl, it's a LP.
Best of Mayumi. That is so cool.
All the fashion turntable LP releases here. You can play the Mayumi project on the turntable.
And let me see. I want to see how they match. This is so cool.
I think it's very similar, except album has a more space. So all the liner notes go into this gatefold, and I think your version is you have to pull out the middle part of the.
Can we see the back
CD for the writing? Yeah.
Is the back the same?
Yeah, back looks the same.
That is so amazing. Congratulations.
Thank
and
you.
I love the music on there. We're actually playing a little bit of the track from An Eye Opener for Angels, which is on this album, right?
Yes.
Could you tell us about that song, Tatsu? And also I want you to talk about Sibling Legacy, which we're going to use a few seconds of.
Yeah, Eye Openers for the Angel is a kind of a discovery process for me that this track was actually, it came from this album called Raw and Alive, and this is a volume 2. And this, by far, I think the sound of the band created with its current members, exactly the way I wanted the band to sound like. In this album says it all, and it's also in the Best of the Mayumi Project album. And the Angel for Eye Opener was that moment of the discovery that I really kind of, wow, it's the sound that I want for this band. And that's why I called it, Eye Opener for the Angel.
It's amazing. And we're also going to use a tiny little bit of Sibling Legacy. I love that title and I love the backstory. Can you share with our viewers about who was that?
I just talked a little bit about that Toyoaki shamisen music with you a few moments ago. And Taiko drumming is the same way that it's been in my family. I grew up with it. I learned everything until I left Japan. Then I started to kind of teach all this stuff to my kids. So 3 of my children, they are all magnificent taiko drummers. And
they are magnificent.
Yes, and the Sibling Legacy are actually performed predominantly by 3 of them. They have, very interesting improvising skill, and I tag along with them, but basically they play together.
And I want to mention their names real quick because they have carved out, their own careers, right? Successful careers. Right. Kyoto Aoki, Eigen Aoki, and Mayumi Aoki.
I decided to make a album for each of my children. So when Kyoto was born, I made the album called Kyoto. Then some of the songs that I played in the album, she also played that in her solo album which she just released, And the second one, of course, Eigen, my middle son, I also made an album called Eigen. And by the time I had Mayumi, this was a time for me to realize, oh my God, we are indeed Asian American family, So, because in the immigrant family, parents go through this identification process of whether they are, in my case, it's a Japanese or forever being Japanese, or I'm going to be part of the Japanese American, i.e. Asian American community. And by the time you have started kids in here, you definitely know you're part of the Asian American community, right? So then I decided, rather than making an album called Mayumi, I decided to name the whole group ensemble the Mayumi Project. So in lieu of producing a album, I think I made the band, and that band has been playing together for 20 years, which Mayumi is about 22 years old now. Laka was a song made for my friend's father. My friend, which was my student at the Art Institute, came from Hokkaido, Japan. His father was very well-known lacquer craftsman. His family had been doing lacquer for so many centuries in Hokkaido, but I think what's interesting about him was that he had allergy with the lacquer. So every time he works with the lacquer, he gets this allergic reaction, but because that's something that he does for his life, he kept doing it.
How many songs do you think you've written yourself?
I don't know. I never counted, but I have over 100 recordings out in the world. So I obviously
well over that. I mean, you were approaching that when we met.
It's a little different from a composer kind of artist because we are improvisers. So many of the compositions are written in some parts of the core parts of the composition is written, then we improvise around it. Right? So that's how we write our songs, and so there are many different compositions.
When ENERI first started working with you on PR, I remember one of the early programs I was asking for the name of the song so that I could put it, I forget what it was. It must have been a program where I wanted to put the program order, and I'm classically trained piano voice. And I wanted, the order of the songs and how long they're going to be and so forth. And you just kind of like looked at me blankly, and it's kind of said, Irene, it's avant-garde. I don't know if you remember that, but that just really stuck in my mind. And that was like my introduction to jazz. It was
I see.
So cool.
Well, because when you're improvising, it could be short or could be long, and you don't know until the music tells us when to end the music.
So, rooted origins of now. Talk about that a little bit, Tatsu. I love the music on that.
Origins of now, which of course the best of Mayumi Project album. It starts with Now. The composition goes Now, and that's the Origins of Now composition. There's two very important Asian American, African American band in Chicago that lasted this long. So the Mayumi Project, also the other one is Funkadesi. So we are friends to each other, of course, but in a different genre of music, right?
Yeah, you guys have never done something official together as a release,
well, we've
right?
done an event together. Raul and I have,
but not in CD,
together,
right?
and
Not in CDs.
Raul's music is more of the they're like a really, really heavy duty party kind of, because they always had like a huge audience, and my avant-garde experimental jazz Afro-Asian, combo always have a few people back then. and this was very, very important first project by Jazz Institute of Chicago. It was a commissioned piece, 1 year long commissioned work on the field to develop this 55-minute suite. Because of the Rooted, 5 years later, we did Re-Rooted by the Jazz Institute of Chicago. Then little later, we had third edition of the Origins of Now called Trans-Rooted. So I did Rooted Origins of Now, Re-Rooted, and Trans-Rooted. I think Baser Live has always been the very much of a core aesthetics for me, bass and the taiko drum, because I really hated to do this traditional music, right? So I wanted to do something cooler than the traditional shamisen and the taiko, because I think the people.
I knew that. I don't think I knew that you hated it.
People need to know during the late 60s and 70s, where Japan is also trying to transform their art scene into more of a contemporary, application. So nobody at the time, when you were born in 1950, so I spent my kids and teenage time to like a late 60s and early 70s and mid 70s. Nobody was interested in a boy who plays taiko drum and the shamisen, and it would be a different story today. I think today it's because it's a kind of chic thing to do for a lot of people. So they go back to traditional, just like a music industry is going back to vinyl. They go back to the traditional art. So if I was a teenager today, Irene, I would have a better time.
I don't know about that.
But my time in the 70s, I had a terrible time doing the traditional music because nobody was interested in it. No girlfriend. You never get the girlfriend by playing the traditional instruments when you are, when you're a teenager.
That's why you did electric bass, right?
Yeah. Right. So I wanted to do the rock music, So I started to play electric bass in the rock band, and I did a lot of rock music. Then I got hooked into this avant-garde jazz music by Black people, right? And this was Art Ensemble of Chicago, Fred Anderson, who I play,
Von Freeman, right? And Wada, Bowden.
Right. And all these people. So I ended up playing with them, but I was inspired by all these guys. I said, my God, this music is so fantastic, because they had this ancient African lineage to their music, to the contemporary blues, R&B, to, all that stuff. And I thought like, wow, man, this is so cool. That's the origin of the Miumi project. But the essence of that concept of merging the real basic foundation of the traditional and the contemporary is in Bass Alive. Is I play the acoustic bass with the drum. Which I'm going to do that this summer with my daughter, Kyoto, for the International Jazz Day.